I'm just waiting for Jackie.
How else we can get full board.
We have Jackie on the line.
We may not do YouTube next month because of the new allowances to allow more people.
Okay.
So you might have another 2 commissions on there. Anyway, going forward.
Okay.
I'll see how it is.
We can all be
No,
back
unless
in
we put 'em
there.
right there.
We could all
Have
be.
2 layers of commissioners.
You could have twice as many planning commission meetings and just have like 3 and then 4.
So, like, we discuss it and then they discuss it in the next week.
Yeah,
and then-
well, you back to back, like from 5:30 to 7, it's this group, or whatever, 5:30, then I am just joking, I promise. I am
You
not.
could have
Well,
joint
or we sit down
subcommittees,
there.
combine the
There
information.
you go,
and,
there you go.
Yeah, it could really streamline it.
We can just go about every 4th seat down there, every other row.
Well, honestly, I mean, if many people we have show up, we can put all the commissioners there and all the.
Recording down there.
It's true.
Although these chairs are a little bit more comfortable,
The comfy chair.
marginally. I don't know.
I think your bag, that's cute.
Have you captured everyone on the phone, or are you waiting for?
Jackie. What time is it? On
It's
your
not
phone? Okay, we've got 3 more minutes, so. We're waiting on Jackie.
I'm here.
Okay, so we need to do a roll call real quick. I have Vern. Say yes if Vern's on the line.
Yes.
Let's see. Robert McMullen,
Yes.
Glenn Roberts,
Yes.
Jackie Miller.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to wait until 5:30 or can we start?
Mhm.
Probably wait, so we can
Yeah.
advertise it.
What's public hearing?
This is also open to the public, so we'll probably need to ask on the phone line.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's gotta be last week, not last
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, I will not be able to outdo how Vern did it last week. He did a fantastic job.
Well, we're
Like
not
you've done it before.
offering the prizes last time for caller 10. You might be able to get some more public
Oh,
input.
You get a free rezone.
You can come in and
They'll be lining up.
More work for us.
wait. I thought you said there was nothing happening here.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing happening, but we just talk constantly all day long. We just tell them no all day long.
That can happen.
Karen, would you mind leading us in the pledge of allegiance?
Sure.
All right, we'll wait for just. Yep, I got my clock right here. It's 5:29 and we're gonna wait until 5:30 to go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, it's 5:30. Oh. Okay. It's now 5:30, and I'd like to welcome you to the May 19th, 2020 Utah County Planning Commission meeting. We have already done a roll call to see who's here, and all of the commissioners are here either in person or by phone. And so with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I have asked Commissioner Ellingson if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please recite the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner, for leading the pledge. The next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes of the April 21st, 2020 regular Utah County Planning Commission meeting. Does anyone have any comments or changes? Anybody on the phone?
Madam Chair, this is Glenn Roberts. I've reviewed the minutes, and I would move that they be approved.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Roberts has made a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
This is Robert. I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner McMullen has seconded that. We need to do a roll call, right? Because all right. So we're going to go ahead and do a roll call vote on that. Commissioner Kiesler,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Thatcher,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you. The minutes are approved. All right. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. And with that, I need a motion to open the public hearing.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Right. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, who seconded it? Okay, Commissioner
Jackie.
Miller seconded it. Commissioner Thatcher made the motion. All right, we're going to do a roll call vote again. All right, Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Thatcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiesler,
Yes.
and then I vote aye as well. So the public hearing is now open, and we will be holding a public hearing for a proposed Utah County Land Use Ordinance text amendment to Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and any other applicable section related to the elimination of the floodplain overlay zone and the adoption of requirements for flood protection in the special flood hazard areas. And we'll go ahead and we'll turn the time over to Mr. Armstrong for the presentation.
Okay, thanks for that introduction. This is Bryce Armstrong, Community Development Staff. As the chairperson has indicated, this is a text amendment that kind of sounds a little more onerous than what it's trying to accomplish. Just as some background or some context, Utah County, unincorporated Utah County, is a member or participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, and as such is a participating community. And as a participating community, the county is required to have certain flood standard or flood development regulations for those areas that are identified by the federal insurance study, the federal flood insurance study, including a flood insurance rate map, as for areas that are identified as having a 1% chance of flooding, the 100-year flood zone, if you've heard of that. And so the county's had that for decades and has been a member of, has been a participating community for a number of years. And those requirements, as mandated to be a participating community, feedback. There is a little bit of feedback between the YouTube and the phone line. So if you're watching your YouTube, you might want to, for those that are watching, you might want to turn your volume down. But as part of being a participating community, those standards have been adopted that are required by the insurance program to allow for development in these areas. And that is what Section 5-11 is currently in the Utah County Land Use Ordinance. The county has adopted a floodplain overlay zone that kind of shows those areas that are subject to these requirements. That floodplain overlay zone mirrors the federal 1% chance of flooding areas. They're one and the same. And so what this proposal is not doing is changing any of those minimum federally mandated requirements. What this is trying to accomplish, among several things, but one of the main purposes is to kind of make the administration of this program a little more efficient and a little more cost-effective and convenient for the property owner. And I'll kind of give you the reasons why. Currently, if a person wants to contest or approach the federal maps, and as far as having those changed, they would have to go through a federally mandated program to have those federal maps amended. And then that process could officially change that federal map, subject to the criteria being met and that determination being made. In addition, they would have to also go through a zone map amendment with the county to make that overlay zone match that new change on the federal maps. And so it's kind of two processes getting to the same criteria and the same standard. And so the staff feels that it probably would be more effective and more efficient to eliminate the floodplain overlay and just have our requirements housed in Chapter 3. We have a section that deals with environmental regulations, and then that way a person is, a person's property is subject to that area as currently defined in our ordinance that is shown on those federal maps, and not have to have that additional layer of the overlay zone. It's particularly, I guess, appropriate now because currently, I say currently, but we're on the tail end of this. There's been an update to our flood insurance maps that has been worked on for a number of years, and we're kind of here at the finish line, which will change those maps to some degree, mainly due to better technology. They're more accurate, and so most people's properties or that boundary is probably going to change. And so in the county, we have 1,000 plus properties that could potentially be affected, and we'd have to go through that process to rezone each of those properties to match those new maps. And so that just kind of seems to be a little redundant and inefficient. So that's kind of the main purpose, and that's kind of just a brief overview, and I can kind of ask or answer any specific questions. In addition, the proposal is to add a few parts of clarity and work through some areas that need to be cleaned up. We're also proposing to add a extra or an enhanced requirement that requires any structure that is going to be built in these special flood hazard areas to be built 1 foot above the base flood elevation. The current federal standard is that these habitable spaces need to be built at or above the flood elevation of that particular zone. When we had our community visit by FEMA several years ago, they recommended that Utah County consider adding what they call a 1 foot or a 2 foot or 3 foot, whatever the county decided, an enhanced requirement that requires an additional height above that flood elevation. For a number of reasons. It helps in protecting property because floods or future floods don't always respect that designated elevation that's been determined through history. But also it can also protect some of the structure, the subflooring structure, the joists below the finished floor from flooding. And I've included a handout from FEMA that indicates the cost it takes to enhance your property. Maybe we'll go ahead and show that right now. The cost that's associated with adding that extra foot or 2 feet or whatever is recovered after a 3 to 4 year period. This should be in your handout, but if you look on this, this current one on the return of investment, it kind of breaks down the additional cost of constructing an occupied structure above that base flood elevation, and then the cost savings through reduced premiums. Flood insurance rates can be reduced by building above this base flood elevation. And so it pays for itself. There's an upfront cost to the property owner, but it would pay for itself in savings through premiums. So that's been recommended to be added. The staff recommended 1 foot. I think a lot of communities do 2 feet. But that's one change that's part of this proposal. Another change just reflects that study that I had previously referenced. Peggy, maybe go to the next, the staff report attachment. This is the red line copy of the proposal that's in your packet. This basically, most of these red lines are just kind of changing the reference from floodplain to this new flood hazard area. Peggy, if you want to scroll down to maybe the last page toward near the end, I'll kind of, okay, well, a little more. Sorry, it's kind of difficult when we're, yes, right here. If you go up, it talks about the maps and studies adopted by reference there, subsection number 4. And so we are, as recommended by FEMA, we are changing the language there to reflect this most recent effective date of this most recent study. That effective date is June 19th of this year, and also some language there at the end of the paragraph that any revisions are automatically adopted by reference. We kind of contemplated that already, but wanted that specificity as requested by FEMA. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're doing. Maybe we'll go back to that map to kind of give you some context of what we're talking about in the county. So in the unincorporated areas of the county, and this map has a little bit of error on it. If you look in the northwest up by Eagle Mountain, it's showing an area that is in the floodplain, and I think that was a mapping error. But most of what this map is trying to show is the floodplain areas, the areas of 1% chance of flooding, and the number of parcels that impacts in the unincorporated areas. And according to this, wait, zoom back out, sorry, I need to look at the, according to this map, there's apparently 1,100 parcels, and those parcels equate to about 34,000 acres that are covered by this area. And so you can imagine, how involved a rezone would be to change that, all of those affected parcels. And so if you zoom into the south end of the lake, of Utah Lake, that's where most of the areas in unincorporated area are impacted. The light blue is the area designated as the 100-year floodplain. And so you can see a lot of those parcels that are covered by it. Those areas, have to build to this enhanced standard and are required by most lenders to have flood insurance. So I kind of blew through a lot of information there, but maybe best ways to answer questions.
So is this map actually comparing the floodplain the overlay zone that we had with the FEMA map, or is this?
Well, they are one and the same.
They really are?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so there's virtually no difference?
No. No, yeah. The floodplain overlay contemplated the counties having the ability to add to that, so to identify areas above and beyond what has been designated on the federal flood insurance rate maps. But I don't think the county has ever done that, and so they are really one and the same. I think part of the intention of that was, this was done in the 80s, and mapping and showing those maps were a little bit different back then, and it was really housed in your local community. And so now we have all these online tools that people can access directly and see where these areas are.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other comments or questions for Bryce? What was that?
I have one.
Okay,
So we're taking out that zone, right? So
Yeah.
that zone will no longer exist. And then it's the responsibility of the property owner as those change over into new property owners to determine if they are in the flood zone, rather than having a zoning that just tells them right off.
Well, yes and no. We are eliminating the overlay zone, but we're migrating all those requirements over to Chapter 3, and they still exist, and those areas are still depicted the same way as depicted on the federal insurance rate maps. And so we just reference those rate maps to determine whether or not a property lies within that. Similar to what we did before, even though we had this extra layer of the floodplain overlay that mirrored that. I know it's kind of confusing, I'm probably not explaining it really well, but.
right, thank you.
I had one other question then.
Okay, Mr.
This requirement to build above the base flood level.
Correct.
Was not in the ordinance before, correct?
That is correct, that is.
This is an addition, so within these floodplain areas, we now add the requirement that they have to build, what is it, 1 foot above?
1 foot above
1 foot
the
above.
base flood elevation, yes, and that, it's at the recommendation from our state floodplain manager, along with FEMA, as a kind of best practice.
Any other comments, commissioners, or questions? Those on the phone,
Karen,
do
this
you have
is-
anything?
This is Bernie Kiesler.
Okay, Vern?
I think this is a very needed change and update. This is kind of a good, better, best thing that we're doing. Kind of lumping them all in as best practices. The 1 foot above base flood elevation is a good practice. 2 feet is better and 3 is best. As a former certified floodplain manager for local jurisdiction and having been back to Emmitsburg, Maryland for training for a full week on this topic, I will tell you that this is a good move in the right direction. And I think it helps to be a little bit more efficient, and we let the flood insurance rate maps determine that and not the county with that overlay zone. So I'm all in favor of this, and I think the cleanup is very good, and I think the 1 foot base elevation is a good start.
Right, thank you. Anyone else?
This is Jackie Miller. I agree entirely with what was just said. 100%.
Right, thank you. Anyone else?
I have another question.
Okay.
If nobody else does.
Go ahead.
So we talked about there being a couple of different options to get that base level elevation.
Is your mic on?
I don't know. It's probably way over here.
There you go. Sorry.
So as far as options to raise the home above that base floor, you could either put concrete blocks, or you could put a crawl space, or another option was to put fill dirt in. In one of the sections, the text that was removed was the option to keep a new home that was built next to adjacent homes that were below the flood plain. You couldn't put it at that same level as those homes, so it would need to be higher up. Would you need to also say that they can't use fill to bring the home up so that their property line isn't, up on a hill and having runoff into the adjacent properties?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the section you're talking about, but I think there is some additions that say any fill requires that there's no rise, a no rise requirement. I may just have to kind of scroll through this for a second.
There's one that's number
What
4
page
that
is
says
this?
fill on page 3, and then the text that was removed is on page 8. So if it's not causing flooding, but it is causing sprinkler runoff, is what I'm referring to.
It's on
Pages
page 3, toward the bottom where it says fill.
What were you saying that was removed?
Removed was on page 8, where it said that a variance could be granted for new construction.
Okay, let's stay here for a second, Peggy. So here, the proposal is that no fill should be placed and accomplished in a manner that will increase the flood hazard in any area. And so it's kind of a no-rise concept. An engineer gives a statement saying, okay, if you're gonna bring fill in, you can't disperse potential flood elsewhere. You have to mitigate that. The area that was stricken out was some subjective language that, you know, we feel hard to measure what's unsightly. And so that was that change. Now, you said your other reference was where?
Page 8.
Okay.
On 8, we're saying that we want them to build not at the same level as the adjacent homes.
Where?
Presumptive relative to approval.
Okay,
That's
so I'm
right.
sorry. So that's this section is referring to, if you go back up a previous page, Peggy, this is a variance for certain measurable distances that may be found in the areas of special hazard requirements. And so this would be someone who wants relief from the requirements. The language that was stricken out, if you go back to the next page, was some subjective language that kind of interprets, you know, what a smaller lot size would be compared to a bigger lot size. And so I'm not seeing the language that would, because they still have to meet the requirements for a variance, and if they bring fill, they still have to show that there's no impact, there's no rise to adjacent property owners.
Okay.
And so I think that's hopefully captured. I hope I'm
think so.
addressing those. Yeah, because that's certainly, we don't want to have a situation where if someone chooses to bring fill in to get them above that height, that they're impacting adjacent properties.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? Right, I have one technical nerdy thing on page 8. The lettering on 2, we struck A, and we just need to re-letter it A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, we'll capture that when we do the ordinance. I think that was a word issue.
That is my nerdly thing that I've done. I think it's a great,
I liked it. That was my only comment.
Now we get the alphabet correct.
What-
Start with B.
This is, on a side note, the county is working at having our ordinance hosted by an online company and would really enhance its ability for the public to view it. And we're gonna look at renumbering to kind of have it be more consistent with kind of best practices. So we hope to see some of these issues go away in the future.
Are you going to co-publishing for that?
I was rewriting some, our bylaws to our nonprofit, and it had Roman numerals, and this was yesterday, I thought, I wonder how many people still know Roman numerals? And I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but,
Oh, no, we're good.
all right, with that, we're gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. Well, the public hearing is open, but to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to comment on this issue. We have no one in the room who is here to comment. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak to this zone text amendment? All right, hearing none, bring it back to the Planning Commission. Well, what would you like to do, commissioners? We have some different options. We can continue to discuss it. We can have a motion of some sort, or what would you like to do?
Gosh, I think this makes a lot of sense. It looks pretty logical. The map doesn't really change. There is the increase in the requirement, but that seems pretty logical in the flood risk areas. So, like Vern, I think I'd be in favor of this.
Okay. All right.
You can also do a motion to close the public hearing,
Do we want to do that after? Okay, I was going to do that after we
whenever
finish
you'd
it.
like.
Okay, well, while we're thinking about what kind of motions we want to make, we can at least make a motion for that. All right, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All right, Commissioner Ellingson made the motion. Is there someone who would second, please?
Second?
Commissioner Thatcher? All right, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner McMullen? There's a motion.
Yes.
close the public hearing, all right. Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellingson?
Yes.
Commissioner Thatcher?
Aye.
Commissioner Kiesler?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes,
And I vote aye as well, so the public hearing is closed. And now, Commission, we're back to pondering the floodplain.
Chair McMullen, this is Commissioner Kiesler. I'm happy to make a motion.
All right?
I move that the Utah County Planning Commission recommend approval to the Utah County Commission of the proposed Utah County Land Use Ordinance Text Amendment, Chapter 3, 4, 5, and any other applicable section related to the elimination of the floodplain overlay zone and the adoption of the requirements for flood protection in special flood hazard areas based upon the findings of fact listed above. I believe there were 3. In addition to the renumbering of the letters, as Chair McMullen pointed out.
You're giving Robert a heart attack, I think. Mr. Kiesler, it's McCandless. I know who you mean. Those mix.
Oh, sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
I got to get those names right over the phone.
It's okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the proposed text amendment. Is there a second on that motion?
I would second the motion. This is Jackie Miller.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Miller, for the second on the motion. Go ahead and have a roll call vote. Commissioner Roberts? Oh,
Yes,
does anyone, before we vote, is there anyone who wants to have any comment, any other last thoughts before we vote? Any discussion? All right, go ahead, Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Ellingson,
Yes.
Commissioner Thatcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiesler,
Yes for me, Chair McCandless.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes,
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. So it's unanimous that the Planning Commission recommend to the Utah County Commission that they adopt this ordinance. All right, thank you. We have one more, this is other business, training and discussion on the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. And it's my understanding that we are going to postpone that. Are we postponing it to next month or until we all are here in person or
Indefinitely.
indefinitely?
We have to do it annually. This is Rob Moore, County Attorney's Office. We're required by state law to do this annually, but we have Adam Beck who's going to present, who's a new attorney in my office, and he is not here tonight. And so I think he wants to be in attendance when he presents that. So I'm anticipating next month.
Okay,
So
all right. So
So we expect everyone to be here next month.
next month,
Unless
all
we're
right.
still in quarantine.
Yes, unless we will be here.
In some way or another.
Yeah.
All right, well, we will keep our group meetings to less than to 3 and less. I'm joking. Anyway. All right, well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you, and we don't need to vote on that. I think everybody just do your thing. All right, thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you for those who participated on the phone. Appreciate it.
thank you. Have a great
job,
night, guys.
Karen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Karen.
Bye.
All right.